We are recording.
Welcome. We are recording, and welcome to the Spectacular Entrepreneur Show. It is December, and we are ready for the holidays, and we are happy that you are taking time to spend some time with us today. I am Nanette Fleeter, your host. It's awesome to be here with you, and I have Mike Macedonio, and actually we are the two that are going to be presenting to you today. Mike and my favorite topic is emotionally charged connection, which we also call the ECC. But Mike and I were just having a conversation before we came on air about not using acronyms. So even though we call it ECC, it really is an emotionally charged connection. So we're going to take you through that today. And so we're going to start out with, what is it? So Mike.
Hi, Nanette. Nanette, can you explain what the emotionally charged connection is? Maybe give us an example.
I can. So emotionally charged connection is what drives you to do what you do. And many people, it's really interesting when you sit down with people and they say to you, so what do you do? And why do you do it? The question is, why do you do it? And they'll say, well, I do it for my family. I do it because I'm trying to hit this big goal. And I will say to people, that's not why you do what you do. That's for whom you do what you do. And that's for what you're doing, because you're trying to reach a goal. But that emotionally charged connection is what has caused you to be on this path, that has caused you to be doing what you're doing today. Because the reality of the world is that each one of us could be doing anything. And especially for entrepreneurs, we could be doing anything, but we choose to go a certain path. And Mike, do you want me to tell them my story?
That'll be a great way of illustrating an emotionally charged connection.
Okay. So when I first went through the process of figuring out why I do what I do, I was asked a series of questions, and it actually brought me back to a point in my life and when I was a little kid. And a lot of them do come from when you're children, but mine came from when I was a little kid. And I actually had to confess to a room of 13 people something I had never told anyone. And that was that I was the target in our village, our little neighborhood, that I was the kid that was bullied and picked on, both physically and emotionally. And I carried that around with me for a long time. Matter of fact, 40-something years before it actually came out of my mouth. And what happened was, it came down to all one day. One day, I was coming home from the neighborhood, the village. We called it the village. And I was on my bike, and for protection of names, I won't say names, but one of the neighbor boys saw me coming, and his father worked construction. So there was always construction stuff around. And as he saw me come by, he had a 2x4, and he swung the 2x4 at me, and he proceeded, and he hit my bike. He actually aimed for me, missed me, thank God, but he hit the bike, and I went flying off the bike, and I got all scraped up, and he damaged my bike. And so I was walking it down the hill, and I can still hear him calling me names. And then what happened was that I walked in the front door of my house, and my mom came out of her sewing room, and she was like, oh my God, what happened to you? And I said, such and such hit me, my bike, with a 2x4, and I got hurt. And I'll never forget it. My mom didn't say one thing to me, not one. And she walked into the other room, and she came out with my brother's brand new Louisville Slugger baseball bat. And she held that bat out to me, and all she said to me was, go back. Now I think to myself, and I was like, I think I was more afraid to tell her no, I wasn't going back, than to not actually do it. So that's probably why I did do it. So I took that bat, and I walked back up to the hill, and I stood out in front of that kid's house, and I was yelling his name for him to come out. And it was really probably a good thing that he didn't, because I probably would have killed him if I would have got a hold of him. But his mom finally told me, he wasn't coming out. But it was the first time that I genuinely understood what success in a terrible situation could really feel like. And what I like to tell people is that for me, my emotionally charged connection is that the day before, there was an 8-year-old who didn't really hold the day after. And that little girl the day after really was in some ways a different person. Now, again, I hadn't told anybody, but he never came after me again. And then when I was looking forward in my life, I started to realize that that baseball bat, I had been figuratively handing it forward my whole life. I do. And the beautiful thing about it is now I get to do this for a living. Emotionally charged connection to what I do, because I've been trying to help people be successful my whole life in whatever they did. That was really important to me. So I didn't want them to feel like the 8-year-old girl the day before. I want everybody to feel like the 8-year-old little girl the day after. So that's my story. Mike, you're muted.
Can you tell us about that client that you've helped with his emotional charge? Because it's almost a different tone than the horrifying event that you had.
Exactly. So and it's true. In contrast, I love using Alfio Giulisano's emotionally charged connection. So Alfio's comes from Argentina, and he actually is a chef. And so he and I worked on his emotionally charged connection. And when we worked through it all, Alfie, his grandmothers had both come from Italy during the war to get away from what was going on over in Europe. And he grew up around these 3 women, always cooking amazing food, amazing meals. And people would come for that food. They just wanted that food. It was just, and he just loved that feeling and joy watching it happen. And so what he decided at some point, I'm a chef, and he wanted to replicate that. And so it's really awesome because he now owns 3 restaurants, and in those 3 restaurants, he still has his mom and his grandmother's recipes. But what's even more fun is that Theo called me to talk about whatever the local ingredients is that he has to make his specials up for that week, because he just wants that feeling of family to be for all of his people that come to his restaurants, and they truly do. So his really comes from a great place of joy. Your emotionally charged connection does not always come out of horrible things. It can come from very joyous things also. Well, unmute yourself.
One of the things I'm hearing is the emotionally charged connection is really showing the why behind the why.
It is.
A lot of conversation because of Simon Sinek around the why, but really coming down to the core. And the core and the essence of it is the emotionally charged connection. And it's one of the reasons why we recall these moments, because they were emotionally charged.
Correct.
And you think about all of those childhood moments that you had. Why do you remember that one? Well, obviously it was going to be an emotionally charged situation when someone's swinging a 2x4 at you.
Exactly.
You know? And the other thing with emotionally charged connections I like people to know is not necessarily just one. There could be other life circumstances that also complement, or work with, those single moments.
I agree with that.
Just share my emotionally charged connection. One of them is being brought up in a lower middle class family with parents, in particular my mom, who always wanted the best for me. And the message was, Michael, you can do anything you want. You can be anything you want to be. You can be the president. And the way she would help me, and this is her way of helping, is always encourage me to do better. Well, as a child, that to me was received as not being good enough. You know, I want mom and dad to be proud of me, but whatever I was doing wasn't good enough because I could have done better. You know, I did well in school, but man, just a couple more A's. You know, I did well in sports, but man, one more goal, you know. And so that's what I heard all growing up. So it was always a feeling of anything I accomplished wasn't good enough. It could have been better. And I'll give you a couple of examples how that showed up. Even as an adult, I still default into whatever I achieved thinking I could have done better. Now, I was the first one in my family to go to college. And what do you think I went to school to study? To be a dentist. Okay?
Really?
School to be a dentist. And after a couple of years, I was good at math, I was good at science, but I knew that I really didn't have the passion to see it through. I enjoyed going to dentist. I still do. I thought I would enjoy the profession, but I just couldn't see myself with the passion of seeing it through to the end. So I switched to business, and I got my degree in business. Well, from that point on, even though my mom and dad supported my decision, for years, for decades, literally up until just a few years ago, my mom would constantly remind me, Michael, you could have been a dentist. Which is not good enough. And I'll tell you, like many of the business owners that we work with that are on this call possibly, hey, it's a struggle sometimes to get a business going. There are times that you wish you were a dentist. And
absolutely.
And I will tell you though, to wrap this up, there was a few years ago where we moved into the home my wife and I are in now, that my mom and dad came out to visit us. And when my mom saw this house, and we live in a beautiful home in California. When they saw this home, she just could not keep saying, Michael, Hugh and Dawn have a beautiful home. Now, what she didn't say, and she has not said since, is you could have been a dentist.
That's awesome.
Well, how does that play into what I'm doing today? And it plays exactly into what I'm doing today. And that is where you're handing off the bat, I'm serving the underdog. Mm-hmm. People are not privileged of having everything they need and, achievement. And so it's particularly in the small business world, that's the life of an entrepreneur.
Right.
That's absolutely the life of an entrepreneur. Now, that's a emotionally charged connection. I'll quickly give you another one that I think also complements and drives me to what I'm doing. When I was a little boy, I went to a Catholic school, and people think this is a joke when I say, no, its name was called St. Rocco's. Okay? A bunch of little Italian boys and girls going to a Catholic school called St. Rocco's. Google it, it exists. There's even a St. Rocco. And St. Rocco's was known to have really mean nuns. As a matter of fact, they were probably the meanest that could exist. And the reason I know that is because they used to make me and my classmates, when we were learning how to read out loud. Now, I will tell you, when it came to me and I had to start reading, the words would come out. And we're going to talk next about the emotional. And you can imagine what my classmates are thinking, hearing me not be able to put sentences together. Imagine what the teachers thought.
Right.
The guy's got to be illiterate. And even as a little boy, I knew two things. I knew how to read. I was reading all the time. Reading was not a problem for me. Doing it out loud in front of other people was terrifying. And the second thing, right, and this still fascinates me today, that as a little boy, that I would have the insight to know that the only thing that was holding me back was confidence. Okay, that was in my head as a little boy, like, you can do this. This is just confidence. This is just confidence.
Right.
And I use that today, knowing that many business owners, particularly when they're starting up in the first even 5 to 10 years, they're so effective at what they do. They know their trade. They're passionate about their trade. They're expert at their trade. But then they also have to put on top of that the confidence of being the business owner. And that's what leads to so many additional skills and things that we have to do. So it's not unusual that we'd be slightly less than confident in that role. Okay. And, for me, that's where I like showing up. I like taking people that are talented at what they do and give them the confidence to be the business owner, to own that space and not have it holding them back because they can't get the words out.
Well, and I think that's awesome, because I think that kind of plays into what the next thing was, how does it shape your business and what you can for us? But I think this plays right into that, where, because when you understand, two things I want to say. Let me back up first. One is, figuring out your emotionally charged connection for some people is a scary thing, because when you do it right, it's about your incentive trainers are digging deep with you. And they're going to really dig and ask questions that are going to make you feel uncomfortable. That's good. It's really good. When I look back on my own experience, I always say that I never cried harder for anyone that ever went through the program with Mike and Eddie than I did. I got to tell you, I believe to this day that I cried harder than anybody else, because I was reckoning with something I had never reckoned with before. I was actually bringing it out. But the beautiful thing about it was that once it was out, it was out. And it gave, and as time went on, it gave me a lot of time to reconcile with it and to really embrace it. And when I first used to tell the story, I would still get very emotional. Well, now I tell the story because I'm really grateful it happened to me. I'm really grateful, because otherwise I may not be doing what I'm doing right now. So digging deep really helps you in getting to where it is that is your real passion about what you do and what's driving it. And then what it does is it helps to change the way you think about what you do, because you're no longer thinking about what you do from this clinical place. You're thinking about it from your soul, your passion, and what it is that you love to do. And then what the thing I love, one of the things that I love the most about when people walk up to you and they say to you, really understand your emotionally charged connection. So my movie happens to be my mom handing me that baseball bat. So I see that movie playing in my head, and it makes me feel really good. And so I immediately start smiling, and I'm like, and the first thing I'll say is, I love what I do. Well, how many people actually start out a conversation by saying, I love what I do? Not very many. So to me, it's, because I don't want to jump into the next part. I let Mike comment on this. But to me, a very positive way, how is not about making money, or shouldn't be entirely about making money. It should be about what you love doing and what you're passing on to others. Mike, I'll let you.
Nanette, I heard what you were saying about how emotional it was the first time, and now you've kind of embraced it. So what was shameful, maybe the first experience, now is something that you are completely comfortable with. As a matter of fact, it actually excites you.
It does.
One of my emotionally charged connections was when I was a little boy, and I was trying to convince my dad I no longer wanted to take guitar lessons. I had been taking guitar lessons for 5 years. I started when I was 8 years old, and as a 13-year-old boy, I wanted to go out and play with my friends. I didn't want to practice every day. I didn't want to take lessons every week. And the words he said to me is this the way you want to go through life? Are you going to quit everything that you start? And again, going back to wanting to make your parents proud, that was absolutely devastating to me. And I was bawling that my dad thought that I would be a quitter. Well, if you can tell, this still can bring up some emotion. And right. Here's the difference. I can talk about my inability to quit. Okay? I have not been able to quit in environments that have actually been harmful to me. Like in the emergency room, harmful, because I would tolerate a toxic work environment and a toxic boss. Okay. But I knew, I said, I will not quit. I don't care I don't care how rotten they could be. I will not quit. And I do that in athletics as well. Now, I can understand that. I know where it comes from. Okay. But if I bring myself back to that 13-year-old boy, those emotions will come back. And again, but in such a great positive way now that I know where my tenacity comes from. Okay. I know the tenacity of business people when they're going to grind it out, even when things get tough, to be successful. And there's a place of empathy that I can work with.
And I have to believe, Mike, that from that point also, you can also, as you're coaching people, see when they should stick with it, and when you can now say to them, maybe because of what you've been through.
Mm-hmm. So one of the times that showed up for me, I was doing a triathlon, and when I got to the run portion, someone stole my shoes. That would be a good time to quit.
That would be.
Yeah, I ran the race barefoot.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, my massage therapist was a little confused when I got on the table a couple of days later.
I was going to say that I'm surprised you didn't end up, that wasn't the ER run, actually. That's crazy.
So, Nanette, give us some examples about how this, obviously we can see how this shows up on what we're doing because it's in our wiring, but how about in terms of our ideal clients? How does this connect with our ideal clients?
Well, I think it gives you real clarity into who you now want to work with, because obviously you want to work with people who are have the same drive, or they have the same. So I guess I have to talk about myself personally. I have found that most of my clients are self-employed. They're entrepreneurs. They are people who are entrepreneurs who are afraid of starting a business or running or having a business, and they don't know how to grow their business. But they know they want that success. They know that it's there. They can see it. And so those type of people who have that success attitude tend to be the right clients for me. Because you actually have people who success, and you have to be careful because success has a lot of different meanings. And so if success for them is just about the money, that's not necessarily the right clients for me. We all want to make money. However, my belief is you get to success not directly to the money. You get success by understanding who they want to work with, and who's the ideal client for them from their emotionally charged connection. Ideal clients are those entrepreneurs. And when I say entrepreneurs, it's entrepreneurs, again, takes different levels. So you have entrepreneurs who are starting a business, but then you have commission-based people, which I also call entrepreneurs, because a lot of commission-based people don't necessarily look at themselves like self-employed people. Even though they're getting a 1099, they might be working under a team or part of a team, or they might work for a company that they actually are getting. So an example would be financial planner, life insurance, those kind of companies where they're actually working for a company, but their business is all driven by commission. And I'll tell you kind of an interesting story. When you understand why you do what you do, this just actually happened to me about 7 months ago. When you actually understand why you do what you do, I was actually doing a presentation at a chamber, and I gave a presentation on chamber as a gold mine. So I mean, all I was doing was giving a presentation on how they can use the chamber and make it good for them to grow their business. And I got a phone call from a guy, and he was like, I really want to meet with you. And we met, and he said to me, the first thing out of his mouth was, I just knew from that presentation that you and I are kindred spirits, and I need you to be my coach. It was one of the easiest sell coaching deals I ever did in my whole life. But I truly believe that when you really understand why you do what you do, it actually helps to automatically attract to you the people that you should be working with, because they somehow feel like they understand you and you understand them. Unmute yourself, Mike.
I'm just going to demonstrate what you just said. Okay, so here's Nanette. She knows to her core what she's all about. She knows her emotionally charged connection and how that fuels her. Okay, here's somebody that's listening to her. Okay, that it's an ideal client because what she is talking about completely resonates with them because they have a similar type of story. And they may not even know what that story is yet, but they have that similar type of story. And so your messaging, okay, took you and them where you both equally, okay, wanted to work with each other.
Right.
Okay? And the messaging was basically your story.
Right.
This is who I am, how I operate, what makes me operate this way, and who I want to serve. And they said, that's it. And you're exactly right. Once we have our emotionally charged connection, once we're using it to identify our target audience, our ideal clients, okay, and we're using the messaging from our emotionally charged connection, it draws people to us. We don't have to go and push them and go after them.
And the other side of that, Mike, is that we have to remember too that, the other beautiful part about it is it allows us to also not work with those people, even though they may want to work with us, that we know it's not going to be a good fit, because we don't have to work with everybody.
Yeah. So, for myself, understanding today that I want to serve the underdog, and the underdogs to me are the small business owners. Okay. I don't have any attraction to working with people that are privileged. For example, large corporations where the people working there are spending other people's monies. They got millions of dollars in marketing and hundreds of people, sometimes thousands and tens of thousands of people to support the business. I don't have a lot of desire for that. Okay, so I know first of all, I don't want to work in that environment. And secondly, okay, I don't have a lot of energy to serve that environment. Doesn't make them bad people. Doesn't mean that other people can't serve that market. Okay, it's just not going to be me. Now, here's something also interesting. When you look at Ascentive and you look at the co-founders of Ascentive, we all have different stories, but interestingly, we all have a similar story in wanting to serve.
I'm here in 1 second.
I know
Mike, can you? Mike over a minute, but he's come right back here, and hopefully he'll have a better connection when he gets back on.
All right. Are we back on then, Nanette?
Yep, I think you're back on.
Awesome. So what I was about to talk about was how the co-founders of Ascentive have very similar type of backgrounds, emotionally charged connections, and serving the audience we do. If you look at Ivan and Eddie and Dawn and I, we all came from that not privileged environment, if you would. Not that we didn't have loving families, not that we...
How do you add muscle to your marketing through this? Well, you add muscle through your marketing because now you're talking about your business differently. And as I stated, it starts with when people ask you the question, so what do you do? And your body starts talking. That's the number one place it starts. And then it's whatever you say next. And you say what you do. So let's just say if you were a financial planner or you, they say, so what do you do? Business coach. Have you ever felt that networking wall go up? Like I can't, like if I put my hand up way up here and you can't see my hand up, that's pretty much because people immediately start to think, I don't need you, I don't want you, you're too expensive, or I already have a banker, I already have a financial planner. They haven't even taken in one thing about you. They've made a judgment call about you. Where it adds muscle is when you learn what to say from your emotionally charged connection that actually keeps a conversation going. So in my world, it may sound a little corny when I first start out. So for those personality type, for different personality types, I might have a different opening. However, a lot of times I will look at people and I'll just smile and I'll say, you know, I really love what I do. And they'll say, oh my God, that's amazing. And I'll say, yeah, you know, really what I do is I have this really awesome baseball bat. And I spend a lot of my days just passing my baseball bat forward so people can really learn how to hit home runs. And I'll stop for a second and I let it land. And sometimes they may have some response to me, but a lot of times I'll let it land for a second. Then I'll say, and you know, it's not because I like baseball. It's because there was a time in my life when I needed to be empowered and someone put a baseball bat in my hand. And that's when I truly understood success. And so what I just want is other people to understand that same success. That's what I do. And then what happens is now we're into a conversation. We're into, so what does that mean? How do you do that? But now I'm into a conversation. I'm not locked out. And that's the whole purpose of it, is you add muscle by not being locked out. And I'm sure my that come back to us and say, oh my God, I have to tell you, now that I'm using those words and I'm using my words at networking events and when I'm talking to people, it's changing my whole relationships with those people. And that is what's happening. You're building a relationship with those people from the first moment they say, who are you and what do you do? You're starting that relationship. And when you can start from a foundation that, and your emotionally charged connection is a foundation that is strong and that will give them a good message to get them to talk back with you, oh my God, it really changes your whole business and the relationship you're about to have with that person. Yeah. Mike, I'll hand it off to you.
Yeah, and I think part of the muscle behind it is, first of all, that we're authentic. Mm-hmm. Okay? That's a workout of muscle right there, that we're authentic. Now, when we're communicating who we are authentically, okay, to a very specific audience, and there's a lot of people that listen to what I just mentioned as who I am and who I want to serve, and they're completely indifferent about that. I don't care about the underdogs. Okay, when they're looking for something else, and that's perfect too, because I'm not wasting my marketing time. I'm not wasting my time and money trying to convince somebody that's not resonating with me.
Right.
Okay, and that resonance is the muscle. Now, in a practical application, for example, okay, sometimes it's just a statement of you know that. Like a quick statement might be that, you know, I empower the underdog with confidence. Okay.
Love that line.
That's just a simple, you know, 5-second line of my emotionally charged connection. Now, I could also take it and do a 1 or 2 minute on it and tie that what I'm looking for. And I'll give you a practical example of that. I do a presentation on creating powerful presentations. And it's really about crafting the word, crafting a way of structuring a presentation that you'll have your audience knowing how to take the next step. I start off that workshop by telling them that I was very privileged with public speaking because I started my career in St. Rocco's. And then I tell them the story about standing up there and being terrified to read out loud.
Right.
And then I bring it back. And my passion today is to help people with a presentation that they're confident with, okay, and that can portray exactly who they are and what they do and have your audience know how to take the next step. Okay, so that's an application of my emotionally charged connection on how I set up that one specific workshop, for example. Now, I just want to point out something. When we look at Ascentive, when you look at the co-founders, okay, we have different backgrounds and all that, but there's a lot of similarities. Every one of us came from a underprivileged environment. You know, Ivan came from a rough neighborhood. You know, even though we came in from loving families, okay, we were not privileged. None of us were born with a silver spoon in our mouth. And interestingly, over the years, we've all been very almost consistent about wanting to serve that small business owner.
Right.
None of us have been driven to say, hey, let's go after the corporate bucks. Let's go after the guys that have the big budgets. So there's value alignment, there's ECC alignment, there's target audience alignment. Although, again, we're very, very different. If you really knew and understood who Ivan is and who he serves, his real passion, his unconscious service is actually to the people that other people are trying to tear down. Okay, that's what ties to his emotional charge connect. Those people that other people are trying to tear down is the person he's going to want to step in for. All right, so it's another complement to that underdog not having the privileged environment to work in.
I never thought about it, Mike, before, but that's actually very accurate when you think about all the ascensive trainers and people involved. It is true. That is who we want to work with. Corporate America really is not our thing. It is about the individuals.
And for some people, it could be. There could be people coming to the organization, and because of their emotionally charged connection, that's their sweet spot. They see the shortcomings people in that environment are having, and know they can help them.
Right.
Okay.
That's true.
And that would just be someone else that can serve that environment. And I believe there are people in our organization that can and will do that.
Yes, there are. But I think what you said earlier, though, I think it is true. I think a lot of us, at least the ones I know, you could be very well, but at least the ones I know really do like that. And I guess I think if they're in a corporation, it's not necessarily about the whole big corporation. It's more about the team of a corporation or for some people in the corporation. We do have some chat questions on here. One of them is, well, do you think ECC, emotionally charged attraction, connect behavioral styles? So can I take that one first? It's very ironic. I have to tell you, if you get to know me, I am what's called a promoter personality. So I am the fun, I'm in a room person. And it's really interesting because the people who are most attracted to me are examiner personality types. I find so interesting. So, but I do, and I happen to be married to an examiner, so that maybe that's kind of, people are feeling like I have some understanding about them from that. I have no idea. But I think that if you understand, my answer to that would be, well, do you think ECC attracts similar behavioral styles? Maybe, but I think if you really understand if you understand emotionally charged connection and you understand behavioral styles, I think you can make it work all the way around. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I think when we look at behavioral styles, that typically what we find is opposites attract. Until they attack.
Yeah.
So when we understand behavioral styles, we can adapt ourselves and, of course, understand the other person. I think that's the first one. I think the other thing in the behavioral styles to understand is there's no exclusive on behavioral styles for example, leadership. And I think with emotionally charged connection would be the same thing. There's not going to be any exclusively. I'm a promoter, go-getter, sometimes go-getter promoter, but very, very fast-paced. Okay, go-getter promoter. And I think my story resonates with people that are not fast-paced. Okay, as a matter of fact, I've had that happen to me a number of times. I've literally had grown men come up to me after a presentation in tears, and they would tell me their story. And I'm talking to somebody that's a 100% nurturer. Okay, but they resonate with my story. So I don't think there's an exclusive of within your style you're attracting that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think that's true either. I think it actually has to do more with the actual story and what they're feeling when they hear your story. Because whatever their style is if that story hits them, then they're going to be attracted to you. We have another one here. It says, I hear and see people talking about what their why is in a sentence of, and quote, my why is to help people achieve their potential, or I love seeing people find their passion. What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, that's okay. So that's the type of messaging that comes across to me as is traditional marketing messaging, and then I think that's an oversimplification of what people do when they try to take Simon Sinek's know your why. Okay. And they try to put it into buzzwords marketing. Buzzwords to me is, your potential, your passion. Those are kind of like marketing buzzwords. And I say that because I'm very conscious of what people create in their messaging. And I always wonder when for example, online, like, did they go take this from other people's website? Because it all says the same stuff. Nothing's authentic about who they are. So
right.
It's almost like I feel like they're coming close, but they're not quite getting there. They're really not going deep into their soul, into their essence to determine their why. And that's what this conversation is all about. So my opinion is they might be going in the right direction. They're simply not going deep enough. And I will say this is one thing I want everyone to hear about emotionally charged connection. It's usually not self-assessed. Okay, it almost always takes a facilitation of a coach that can help you go deeper, ask the deeper question, continue to go deeper. And I've seen that, that process, that coaching process, sometimes take days of okay, let's revisit here, and going a little deeper, because here's one of the things that can happen with an emotionally charged connection. If we call that center of the emotionally charged connection your essence, for example, the absolute being inside there. Like in my case, not being good enough is a wound. It's something hurtful. And so the way we cope with that is over time, we create a scab over the wound, a protection. Okay, and years of protections. We create stories. We have all kinds of things that protect that wounded little child, that child that was disappointing his mom and his dad because he wanted to quit at playing guitar, should have been a dentist, could have done better. Okay, and now to really remove and peel away that scab to get to that essence will take facilitation. And that's where a coach comes about. That's what we do in Incentive. Okay. Now, once we peel it away, guess what? It's not really hurtful. It becomes your greatest asset. Okay, of understanding it and knowing how to apply that in what you do and who you work with.
Well, because one of the things, Mike, is that, and reading this here and going and agreeing with what you're saying here, is that these are buzzwords, and these are words that make people feel comfortable. So you're attracting them because you think, I'm making them feel comfortable. But the reality is that when you use your emotionally charged connection the correct way, it's your story. And you know what? No one else has your stories. They're your stories. Mm-hmm. And that's what really connects the people with you. So you have to be willing. It's like I said, when I started out telling mine about how I will say to people, oh, I love what I do, and I have this really awesome baseball bat. Well, to some people, that's going to be cheesy. It's not going to feel good to them. You know what? In my world, that's okay. Might not be the right people for me. So you have to be willing, but in the end, what they do understand, because I do say it's not because I like baseball, it's because there was a time that someone put a bat in my hands. They're learning that this is my story. It's not just a buzz. This is a part of me. And so I think that makes a huge difference. And I totally agree. This is not about the surface. This is all about, I love the iceberg analogy. This is getting down to what's under the water, because that stuff that's under the water is really the value that you can bring to the top that will make that iceberg even bigger and better up on the top.
Yeah. In terms of the muscling this, you can evaluate your own message. You can evaluate other people's message. Is the message promoting a product or service, or is the message promoting a person? Okay. And for most business owners, okay, they're going to be far more successful, far more effective in their marketing is if they're marketing the person. Okay. We're in the coaching world. There are a million coaches out there. If I was trying to market coaching, I will sound like every other coaching organization. Okay. When I'm working with people that sell insurance, the same thing. There are plenty of places and plenty of people to get insurance from. What's the one thing none of them have? You. Okay, you're the most unique thing. And so creating that unique message, creating that authentic message, again, going back to the emotionally charged connection, is so much more powerful than any buzzword marketing that's going to get created. And I think that's a key. If people want to evaluate from this 30,000-foot view, are you marketing a product or service, or are you marketing yourself? Okay, and you're going to be way more effective if you're marketing the person, marketing yourself.
Because the reality of it is most of the time people are buying a product, but they're really buying you.
Absolutely.
And when you think about even the things that you buy, you feel comfortable buying those things because you have a relationship with the person who owns the place or runs the place, or you just don't go out and just buy. So you really have to think about, people are buying you, and that's who they want to know is you. And that's where your emotionally charged connection comes in. And I know we're getting here to 147 here, and I want to say to you, to the people watching this and who will listen to this later, is embrace this. Find an incentive coach who can help you with this. Have them work with you and really get you to get to your why, because I know it is life changing. And not only for me, but for the many people that I have worked with through the years, it has totally changed the way they're thinking about their business and what they're doing. And if you want to be really fulfilled in what you do, this is a huge part of it. So embrace it. It can be scary, I get it, but just embrace it, because what comes out on the other side is amazing.
Yeah. So just going to compliment what you said about the people buy you. That's what they're buying. I live in wine country. I got thousands of options for wine. Okay. Which ones am I attracted to? Which ones am I loyal to? Okay. The ones that give me an experience where I can go in, I know the owners, I'm tasting in the barrel rooms. Okay. My wife and I literally will not go to Napa. Okay. Why? Because that would be the privileged people. That would be the large organizations, large corporations, employees there that work for the organizations, but they're not the owners. In Sonoma County here, we have more interactions with owners and farmers. And, and I got a lot of wine. I mean, I'm attracted to them for the same reasons that people are attracted to me. Okay. Hardworking, underdog style of ownership. Okay. And those are the people that we support. And I don't make it a conscious effort to say, okay, who's out there that's really the underdog? I just understand that's the way, that's the people I want to be attracted to.
Right. It just happens. That's exactly right. It just happens. So really, I think we've hit this really well today. I don't have anything else to add unless you do, Mike.
I need to add better bandwidth on my internet, but I haven't figured out how to do that yet.
Oh, I will admit to you, that is something you do need to do.
Yes, I so enjoyed this conversation with you today, Nanette. Again, it's so important to us. It's so important to the business world that if we understand it, if we embrace it, okay, it really is business changing and life changing.
I totally agree. And I just cannot say enough. Go find an incentive this, because it will be a life changer for you and your business, both personally and professionally. It's just a life changer. So I think we are done, unless we have any of our guests that would like to add one last question, or not, panelists that would like to add something else up here. We did get a great show. Thank you so much. We greatly appreciate that. We are at the end of the year here. It's 2018, and we're going to be moving into 2019. And my hope is you have got all your goals already set up and ready to run in January, because you actually should have already been. 2019 is going to be an awesome year for all of us. We'll be back here on the Spectacular Entrepreneur Show. We have enjoyed having you this year with us, and we look forward to next year. Mike, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes. Again, thank you, Nanette. Thank you for everyone on the call. Happy holidays, and go out and have an amazing business and a spectacular life.